tonight's debate, or who fared better in tonight's debate and why?
Well, I started out thinking that it would be a draw, but I do think that Hillary had the advantage in the debate. She did stay on point 95 or 99% of the time. There were moments there where she really did come across as very presidential. I think that Trump kind of started out on an even keel in the beginning, and then quickly, resorted to the Donald Trump that we all know and recognize, with the hand gestures and the interrupting and sort of really just sort of flying all over the place in his answers and bringing up things that were not even asked about. And I think the moderator, Lester Holt, had to try to bring him back down to earth a number of times. So I think the edge goes to Hillary Clinton.
So I think from a purely debate kind of strategic, traditional view of what I would view as debate, Hillary won. But, again, what I said in the beginning is perception is sort of everything in this election. So for Donald, he did exactly what he needed to do, and in every other debate or campaign speech, his strong suit is gesticulation, not articulation. And it's whatever works for your voting base, right? And if that is what's getting people riled up, to me, it is sort of the same lack of substance that a lot of campaigns have hung on to. People in the last election, hope and change are two very hollow words unless you insert meaning and unless a candidate inserts meaning. Trump is doing things, make America great again. What does that mean? You fill in the gap as the voter, right? So those are strategic ways to approach a voting base, and I think he's stuck to the message he needed to tonight. I think that will invigorate his voters, and at the same time, I think what Hillary did is going to just give ammunition to the fact that she came more prepared and was more polished and seemed more presidential in the end.
So I think Hillary clearly won, and it frankly would take longer to run down the list of reasons why, many of which have already been mentioned. So let me tell you why I think she won, purely from looking at what Trump didn't do, or frankly what he did, because that'd be a longer list too of things he didn't do. Here's what I wrote down. He agreed with Hillary Clinton at least 7 times on the stage, out loud. Agreed with Hillary Clinton. He admitted to not paying taxes, and in fact flouted the issue by making clear that's just good business, right? He admitted to not paying a contractor. Now, he tried to give some example or some excuse as to why he may not have. He didn't say he had an actual reason. He said, well, maybe he didn't do a good job. But he never denied the fact that he didn't pay the man. He advocated for an unconstitutional program. He tried to explain that away, but it's clearly unconstitutional based on its disparate effect against black and brown men. And he admitted to settling a lawsuit years ago where he was found to have discriminated against African Americans in housing. Those are 4 admissions and 7 agreements with the person you're running against. I can't imagine under any metric how he would have won that debate. She clearly won.
Quick interjection on that. I think that we are recklessly partisan. It's a problem, right? And I think that's exemplified by saying agreement with your opponent is a political problem. We should be able to agree. Certain things are bad, right? Some things are just objective, and I'm not, this is no knock on what Ernest said, but that's true. People are gonna say Hillary won because Trump agreed, but I don't understand why we cannot agree on issues in an election. And that's really a problem right now, is that it is so partisan to the point where we will literally destroy any semblance of a functioning government if this is how we continue. So we've got to have an opportunity for people to say, you're right. We might not agree on how to get there, but I agree with you that the basic premise is correct. I'm all for bringing in the audience, so I would say.
I think you're right. And the only point I would disagree with is, we talked earlier about what's the importance of having these debates, having 2 people on the stage together describing their view of America. Trump has described, and the Republicans have described in their convention, a pretty solemn and desolate view of America, right? We are on the brink of absolute catastrophe. And but for this strongman dictator type to save us from it all individually, we are all going to perish at the hands of weak and fleckless Democrats. Hillary Clinton has created, and the Democrats have I think, provided through their convention and through the campaign, a vision of America on the rise. a vision of America better than it was, that can be even greater than it will be. And so I think when those visions are that disparate, to have one candidate agree with the other without much qualification, at least 7 times, in this rare instance, I think is a sign that he's somewhat losing because he's described a different world we live in. Generically, you're absolutely right. Look, it was great to see Michelle Obama and George W. Bush hugging each other at the dedication of the National African American History Museum. It was great to see John Kasich a month or so ago coming to Washington and agreeing with the President of the United States on a trade deal. I think in this instance, when he's trying to distinguish himself as better, bigger, louder, badder, so to speak, I think it hurts him to agree.
I think the term you're looking for was big league.
Big league, that's right. He's gonna
Just take his, I think Trump won. I just want to see who was the 9 that voted for it. I don't actually think he won. I think the first 30 minutes he was very much in the same league, and I was pleasantly surprised to see we actually might have a balanced debate. And then it was just, I think I said it beforehand, and I don't think many people disagreed with me. She just has to get out of his way, and the hands came out, the gestures. I mean, the typical stuff that we've come to expect of Donald Trump, he did, and I hate to say it so bluntly, but he just careened off the road into the ditch. It was very sad to watch from enjoying a debate. And some of it's just, when he got in, I said he doesn't do weeds very well, and I meant it. And examples when he talked about the Chicago neighborhoods, he's not wrong about, I read a book in college called A Hope in the Unseen. I used to deliver pizzas, and the manager would make us read when we weren't delivering pizzas. I think that's like a labor violation, whatever, but I read, and it was a great book about the Chicago inner city neighborhoods, and so ever since then I followed. He's not wrong. The Chicago inner city neighborhoods have a lot of issues, and they have not gotten better the last 8 years. So his attack is not incorrect, but he just so poorly articulates it. And it's like, I was following on Twitter some of the people that do the right track, wrong track as they track people. As soon as he said that, just like the same stuff when he brought up stamina, his just numbers dipped. He's just not the right person to be making that argument. It's hard for him to relate to anyone in an inner city neighborhood, much less a black inner city neighborhood. So I think he whiffed on that. On the gold standard TPP, he could have pushed her a little more on that. She did say that. She wishes she never said that. Maybe they'll use it in a TV ad later. And when we talked about cybersecurity, he didn't take one chance to pounce on her about her private server. I mean, I felt like Lester just gave him a little softball there, and I was like, he's going to swing. This is going to be a real big moment for him. Nope, nothing. I was very surprised on how he didn't take advantage of the real opportunities, and then he just got in the weeds on some of these issues he shouldn't be touching. And he looked bad.
Scott, were there any questions from the audience, sort of post-debate questions that you wanted to get to?
I'm just going to, we didn't get much and during the debate except a couple regarding the VP debate, and they basically centered around what were expectations for the VP debate, if any.
Well, let me ask the panel this then. Oh, okay, yes.
Hi, can I hold it? I know how to do it. Hi, I'm Andrew Deloach. Ernest Deloach is my husband. Whoop, whoop. You all are doing an excellent job. Chris, are you still going to vote for Trump?
I'd like to remind everyone it's a private ballot. At least here in America. And I'd also like to ask, when did I ever say I was voting for Trump?
Here's a question I do want to ask panel members. A lot of presidential debates, and in the case of Benson and Quayle, a vice presidential debate, are remembered for singular moments. Did we have a singular moment in tonight's debate that will be remembered in the future?
I'll tell you what's going to turn into a GIF real quick is Hillary Clinton going, ooh, and laughing. Yeah, you're going to see that a lot tomorrow.
Yeah. You know, I don't know that it'll rise to the level of historical, but I thought her comment that was clearly planned, but the timing was perfect, and that, you know, it seems like Donald Trump is criticizing me for having prepared for this debate, which I did. I also prepared to be president. I thought that was a mic dropper. I tweeted boom after she said it. I thought that was pretty good.
I'm still scratching my head over the 400-pound man and the 400-pound bed. I don't know what that was about.
Let's be honest, as he was saying that, he's probably going to say a lower number, but then he panicked about his base and just went as high as he had to go so he didn't offend anyone. I don't know if there's that moment. The truth is neither one of these folks are built for that debate. I mean, we got spoiled with Mitt Romney and President Obama 4 years ago. Mitt is a boardroom guy. I know Donald claims it, but Mitt, I mean, he was a previous governor. He'd been in his share in the public eye. And of course, President Obama was great. So those were great one-liners back and forth, and they actually knew how to kind of put that out there. This, when you could telestrate when Hillary was going to do one of her one-liners, because she'd get all excited. She'd see Donald say something, and then when she didn't deliver, sometimes I was like, oh, is she cold or something? Like, I mean, because you knew what she was going to do. She was so excited. To her credit, she prepared and she was ready for it. And so when he said certain buzzwords, she was ready to go. But it was so obvious that this was a canned answer, not just some flippant, the 80s want their policy back, you know. So.
Okay, and a final question, because we are approaching our deadline, unfortunately. Briefly, do you think tonight's debate moved the needle on the presidential race? You know that the polls have tightened up lately. It's within the margin of error on a lot of national polls. Do you think we're going to see a difference over the next few days?
I think we may see a little bit of difference. I happen to think that most people are decided on the question of who they're going to vote for. A lot of people are simply not saying who they're going to vote for. I think we might see the needle move a little bit on Hillary Clinton in her favor. But I do think that Donald Trump did, I think, make a lot of points that score with his base. And so that's why I don't foresee anything major, and we're only talking on the margins here, because he made a lot of points that his base loves. The deal with Iran is one thing, came up over and over again. It was a serious talking point for him. He did mention the stop and frisk, which, as we know, is unconstitutional, but that does play to his base and the law and order thing. So I think on the margins, maybe.
I want to say a quick aside about sort of the debate in general, and then I'll give my opinion on the polls. I'm deeply frightened by the fact, and I talked about this with some folks on the stage on Saturday night, that we have come to see it to be a virtue in politics if you have a stagnancy of thought, right? You are criticized if you've changed your mind ever in your political career. And I don't know what profession we would accept that sort of lack of critical thinking and reflection, except for in politics, right? Because the moment that you ever stray from that political line, we call you a flip-flopper and your career is over, and we saw that tonight. You changed your mind. I pray that we have politicians who reflect on the decisions they've made, and if the evidence shows that decision was wrong, they change their mind, and they tell us why. But for some reason, we think that that is a nail in your coffin as a politician, and you saw how vehemently each of them denied changing their mind on things. I think the voters need to really look at that, and we need to not make that such a virtue in politics that you don't reflect. Because if anyone else did that, if a lawyer did that, your doctor, your financial planner, you would fire them for continuing down the line of a bad decision when they know it is wrong and they continue to do it. So that's just my view on this debate in general. It highlights some very scary parts of politics that I wish we would all talk about a bit more. But to the polls, I don't know. I don't know if it's going to change too much. I think each of them did exactly what they needed to do to reaffirm their base. They highlighted everything that we like and dislike about them. So I don't know if it's going to be that dramatic effect, and I think historically it really hasn't had that much of a major impact. Maybe overnight with tweeting and all this other stuff it will, but I don't know. It'll die down a little bit. I think it's yet to be seen with the next debates.
So I think, no, absolutely. I think Hillary gets a bump coming out of this debate. I think there were some questions regarding Hillary's, I hate to use the word, stamina, endurance, health. I think there were some questions regarding some intangibles. Everybody knows she's the smartest person in the room. Everyone knows she knows more policy than anybody. Everyone knows she knows foreign policy far better than her opponent. But I think there were concerns about her relatability, how personable she could be. There were questions about maybe that she might be aloof, that she might be too attacking, that she might be too personal. There was none of that. It's interesting. I know that Donald Trump had mentioned in preparation, he'd done sort of a psychoanalysis of Hillary Clinton. It failed completely. She was completely unaffected by his hysterics, by his histrionics, by his gestures, by his yelling, by his interruptions. She was, I think, the view of presidential. She was cool under fire, and I think that's something she had to show. So I think she gets a bump. Again, I don't think if you were a Trump fan going in, you're not going to suddenly abandon your candidate because of what happened tonight. But I don't know that anyone feels better. I don't know that anyone's more reassured about his temperament, though he claims that's his best attribute. It was kind of funny to see it unfold. Language certainly isn't. That's for sure. So I think she definitely gets a bump. It's all about sustainability, right? I mean, as we're speaking, everywhere in the country right now, on television, on the internet, on Twitter, in rooms and homes, people are doing what we're doing. They're all post-gaming. And tomorrow morning, the campaign's first job is going to be to remind us of all the zingers that each one landed and all the misses that each candidate may have missed. So it's going to be how do you craft the message coming out of this debate going into the next debate. But I think Hillary gets a slight bump.
Okay.
Ernest may be right, but I don't think it matters, and I'll explain why. So if you recall, and we've discussed it last time, but that's 'cause the last time we had a presidential election, when Mitt beat President Obama in the first debate, the polls tightened. And if you read some of the stories, the firsthand experiences, everyone in Obama land, so to speak, freaked out. He didn't. He's cool as a cucumber, but everyone else around him did. And so everyone thought that Mitt had pulled even and maybe even pulled ahead. And then sure enough, you get to Election Day, and it turns out he was never close. Now, granted, they had a great campaign apparatus, and they knew what they were doing. I just don't think it matters. I think, and what they found, though, is when they do the polling, folks who are more likely to vote for Mitt anyways are just now speaking up. So when they get called by the poller, yeah, Mitt. And so I think what you'll find, and I think Ernest is correct, that a super voter Democrat who may have been unenthused by Hillary Clinton but was probably going to vote for her anyways because the alternative was never going to be the case with Donald and they weren't going to go third party, will now be a little more enthusiastic in their response, maybe take that poller's call, and so you'll see a bump. I think what's more interesting to see is how they use some of these sound bites. I think what Obama's folks were so good at, and both against McCain and Mitt, is taking these sound bites in the debate and what seemed like $1 billion in campaign money and just putting out these ads the following days and weeks afterwards of catching the one sound bite where they were off point. Tonight, Donald was off point quite a bit, but all Mitt had to do was make one mistake, and they were going to use that sound bait. Same with John McCain. That's what you'll see the next couple weeks. That's what she's been doing for the last 3 or 4 weeks, just running ads of stuff he says. So, whether it's talking about her stamina or something else, they're going to find the right soundbite that they think tests well, and they're just going to put it out there for us to consume, and it's going to make anyone who was already a Hillary supporter stronger. It's going to make a Trump supporter hate her more. Don't pick on my candidate, but the middle of the crowd is either going to stay where they are in the middle or maybe move towards her.
Well, thank you. We're going to have to wrap it up there. I'd like to thank everybody who attended tonight and everyone who watched online. Thanks to Jay Galbraith and the rest of the leadership team at Valencia College. Special thanks to Professor Scott Crosby for fielding questions from the audience. Thank you for your good questions. And finally, thanks to our Central Florida 100 panelists tonight for joining us and delivering some really interesting analysis. We hope that all of you who watched tonight will leave more engaged and more informed about this year's elections. And whatever you do, don't miss your chance to vote in this race and the others on the ballot. Good night.